So my number three is Wings of Desire from 1987, directed by Wim Wenders, starring Bruno Ganz, Solvang Damartine, Otto Sander, and Peter Falk. Quick logline. An angel tires of his purely ethereal life of merely overseeing the human activity of Berlin's residents and longs for the tangible joys of physical existence when he falls in love with a mortal. So this movie came to me, I think, in that kind of critical period of movie watching. I want to say in 2015, 16
Okay.
timeframe, I think. I don't think I'd watched that many foreign films at that point. Definitely not watched any German films for sure. I think
Hmm.
my education of foreign films started with French films and Spanish films, like we've covered in the past on this list. So this was sort of a new challenge, but also a movie that is kind of poetic and black and white, and I think it definitely haunted me and pushed me. But I think the core of this movie, which resonated with me from the beginning and still does, is it poses some very hard questions about who we are as people and the full kind of spectrum of humanity, if you will. The sadness, the despair, and the joy in little things, and all of that. And there's something about observing all of that in a bird's eye view kind of way is absolutely mesmerizing. And it's obviously done in a very poetic way. It's not lost that this is right after World War II. It's in Berlin. So it adds a lot more depth and weight
Hmm.
to the significance of the movie. And then, of course, the way music and the technique of it all is used to you to kind of be put in this bird's eye view frame of mind is amazing. Absolutely. So yeah, that's why this movie is on my list, because it's hard to classify this movie as a pure drama or a
Hmm.
comedy or any of the typical genres that we know of. It's a poem, really, this movie, a haunting poem about life and humanity. But before I go any further, had you watched this movie before?
I had not watched it before.
Ah,
I'd heard of it because in the 90s it was a famous Hollywood remake that had not seen,
right,
but City of Angels with Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan
right,
and that Goo Goo Dolls song that was everywhere in
right.
1990, whatever that was. So
Yep.
I had known that at the time when that movie came out that it was based on some foreign film, but I didn't know what that was. And in the years since, I knew about the film, but had always wanted to see it. And it definitely, I think it's interesting when you mentioned at the beginning of the episode about challenging you and wanting to needing or feeling the need to kind of go back and continue to kind of unpack it. I thought the movie was very effective, but I also felt like there's more to this and I want to see it again.
Mm-hmm.
The things that definitely stood out were the just the incredible cinematography. So, he is an angel for about 80% of the movie before he decides to become human. And the way that the camera sort of captures like this gliding bird's eye view of all these different lives going on in East and West Berlin, and the way that they weave in the sound of, because the angels can hear people's thoughts, and it's so you're
Mm-hmm.
hearing people's thoughts and what they're thinking about their situations, and the camera glides in and out as this POV, sort of God's eye view essentially, because they are angels too. That I just was blown away by how beautiful the cinematography was and the use of black and white, and then the switch to color I thought was
Yeah.
surprising. I was not expecting that either. It's like, oh
Yeah.
wow, like it's color in the when he becomes like the human perception is color, but the angels only see everything
Yeah.
in black and white, which is interesting. Like I would think maybe it would be the opposite or something. Like the angels would have sort of more that they can see, and the world would look because they're seeing all these feelings. Like if you think it'd be more colorful potentially for the angels. So I actually liked how it was the opposite of that. Like you could sort of sense that these angels were sort of trapped in this world where they couldn't feel, even though they couldn't feel themselves, even though everyone else was feeling around them. I thought that was very effective too.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I was thinking about that too, but where I landed was that that is sort of their desire, that they
Mm-hmm.
want more,
The
because they
angels, you mean?
can, the angels,
Yeah,
yeah,
right,
because they can hear it, they can feel it. That part is heightened, but they can't touch it.
right,
They
right,
can't kind of embody all these things, and that's why there's a distance, and that's why life for them is not in technicolor, because it's
right.
not everything, it's not real in some ways, right? So the other kind of thing that this movie can go so horribly wrong, right, in terms of it can feel very cheesy and corny,
Mm,
and also kind of the poetry of it can just get boring and dull. But there's something about Wim Wenders, really, I think, and he's one of my favorite directors. I almost put Paris, Texas on this list too, because I probably watched that not too long after this one.
Mm-hmm.
Again, an amazing film, but yeah, there's the calibration of this movie is so right. I think because it pulls you even though it pushes you. And at the end of it, I think what I come take away from this movie is that I felt a sense of joy in just kind of being human in the messiness of it all. Because when you're viewing all these people through an angel's frame of mind, yes, there's pain and suffering,
Mm-hmm.
but you also see how united everybody is in a way. Because everybody has those same kind of desires and wants for the most part, and that's quite humbling actually, and a good reminder, especially in times of grave conflict and such that
Mm-hmm.
we are living through now. The common people for the most part want similar things, and there's something kind of uniting about that, just seeing it literally from a bird's eye view. And then the other opposite part of that is that we as humans, we are often chasing the otherworldly, or
Mm-hmm.
what if we were elevated to a higher plane or went to heaven, or whatever we might believe in through our beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
that would save us, or that would cure us of whatever problems we are dealing with. And it's funny to see that the people who are in that elevated plane actually want to be here,
Right.
want to feel more, and want all the messiness of life and navigate through that, because there's something so innately special about that, just holding somebody who you love, or being miserable because they've left you, or sitting in agony in this area where atrocities were committed, whatever that might be. It's
Mm-hmm.
all real, it's tangible, and nothing can replace that. So I don't know, I walked away from this movie the first time, and I hadn't seen it in a while. Seeing
Mm-hmm.
it again, I just walked out feeling a sense of gratefulness, and this kind of melancholic joy which this movie has, but it doesn't lay it hard on you, which is the beauty of it.
Yeah, it definitely, when I was watching it, and the angel, the main angel, you talks about what he wants, and I was like, okay, well now he's gonna. And I remember the trailers from City of Angels with Nick Cage, so I sort of knew where the plot was going, but it happens so late in the film that they
Yeah,
definitely really I don't know to say like tease that out, but I was expecting that to be like, oh, the second act, he becomes a human, and then this is now the rest of the film. But they wait until like the last, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes of the movie. It's like well into the third act. So they don't do like that decision. It's more about him desiring that than actually getting it and experiencing it, which I thought was very what's the word I'm looking for? Restraint. The filmmaker has
mm-hmm.
a lot of restraint to that, and that made the
Mm-hmm.
movie more powerful to me, actually. And the reason why I definitely want to go back on it too, which is what you were kind of touching on as well. There's a lot of layers in this movie because it does take place in Berlin, a divided Berlin. The wall was still up. There was not a hint that it would necessarily maybe come down. And there's a lot of flashbacks to World War II and talking to people that were survivors of that war, and then
We're
even
haunted
allusions to the
by it.
Holocaust and all
Yeah,
these things. And that I was not expecting actually in this movie. And those are the layers where I'm like, wow, the movie's saying a lot and has a lot of things on its plate. And I want to go back and explore those other themes, and not just that the main theme of, yeah, the angels and the desires of, what them wanting to be human, right? That's the main plot, but there's all these
right.
other things going on that makes this movie very complex in a good way, that I want to go back and re-examine those themes. You really do feel that you are in 1980s Berlin. Like, I've never
Yeah,
been to Berlin,
same.
and when I do go, obviously will be way after the wall came down and things like that. But I felt after watching this movie, I felt like I knew what it felt like to be there during that
Totally,
time, which is very affecting as well.
totally transportive.
Yeah.
I guess few more things to mention. I think Bruno Ganz's performance is absolutely incredible. That's the other thing, that this movie
Yeah.
totally falls apart if you don't believe him as this angel person.
Mm-hmm.
But there's subtle things of just his body language and the way he looks at people, the way he empathizes with the suffering, but also has this longing and desire for humanity, but also has this gravitas to him and kind of a larger than life sense
Mm-hmm.
around him. I think is amazing. And then the other kind of twist in the movie is Peter Falk, which
Yeah,
is so cool. And the fact that he's playing himself, and he's
yeah,
a, spoiler alert of people who haven't seen this movie, he's an ex-angel,
yeah,
which I think is, which I think now that I'm thinking about this, again, credit to Wim Wenders, that you need some sense of humor and chuckle
right.
in this kind of a thing.
Uh-huh.
Otherwise, it becomes too self-serious and almost loses you. And there's something funny that, yeah, it's Columbo
Yeah,
who's in Berlin shooting something, and people recognize him, and oh, it turns out that he's an ex-angel.
yep,
It's just so comical, but in such a
yeah.
sweet kind of a way, which I don't know. I had a smile throughout the scenes that he was on. It's so cool. Very
Yeah,
cute,
I
actually.
had no idea he was in the movie. And when he
Yeah.
shows up at the beginning, I'm like, whoa, wait, what? He's in this? That's so random. And then when I found out, or as the movie goes on, I was like, wait, he's playing himself? That's
Yeah.
even like weird. Like, this is weird, but like in a fun, yeah, in a fun way. And I like Peter Falk. Like, he's
Yeah.
cool. So he does bring some levity to this movie, which very easily could be too self-serious and dour. But you know, I think that again, the credit to the filmmakers where they're
Yeah.
adding in the right amount of, I don't want to say like comedy, because it is comedy, but
No.
it's not really it's just levity. I guess that's a better word for it. The right amount of
Yeah.
levity in the film.
Because it's, I think, trying to portray life, right? That through
Right.
all this suffering in a place that's divided, and there's so much misery around you, but there's also joy in the little stuff. Like
Right.
the whole thing that with the girl who's this trapeze artist with whom Bruno Ganz's character falls in love. Like her arc is so incredible, right? That there's these moments of wanting more and things not happening, but then also rediscovering the joy of what she does. Even though
Mm-hmm.
she knows this is not going to be that big, she still has camaraderie and community in her the troupe that she works with, and all of that, but also has, you know, suicidal thoughts, which is,
Right.
this is what life is. You know, we're
Mm-hmm.
all kind of like that. One days could be better, the other just feels like, oh, when would all this end? It's
Right.
just so amazing. And then the last thing I would say is that this is not a big budget movie by any chance. Like today, if you, or any era, if you were to pen down that, oh, we're going to make a movie about angels and such, you would immediately think about special effects and all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of things. This is an independent movie, and it looks incredible. And you
Yeah.
kind of already mentioned the cinematography and such up front, that it just proves over and over again that you don't need that much to
Right.
make something compelling. If you know what you're doing and you have your head and heart in the right place, you can make it, which is great.
No, I agree. And just before we move on, have you seen City of Angels with Nicolas Cage?
I have, but I have no memory of it. I
Oh, you
remember the
have
Goo
seen
Goo
it.
Dolls
Oh,
song.
okay.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
when
I
it
mean, the Goo
came
Goo Dolls
out.
song you can't escape. Oh, so
Yes.
you saw it when it came out.
Yeah. But I actually, for a long time, didn't even realize that this was a remake of this
Oh,
movie, because I had no awareness of this movie until,
uh,
much later.
got it.
But
Got it.
maybe I should go and watch that movie again now.
Yeah, I've never seen it. And I was, after watching Wings of Desire, I was thinking, oh, should I watch City of Angels? I'm just sort of curious now on how they took this film and boiled it into something which I bet he becomes human probably in the first 30 minutes. You know, I can see the Hollywood version of this
Oh
story
yeah,
for sure, of how they can weave in more just four quadrant kind of, turn it into like a
definitely.
tragic romance in some
Probably.
ways, probably
Yeah.
what the tone is. But yeah, just curious. That's funny you'd seen it, but don't remember
No
it.
memory
So
of it. I do remember some good friends of mine around me during college days, like swooning, and kind of this movie becoming kind of a gateway into what falling in love might feel like and things like that. I remember vaguely having these
yeah,
conversations about this movie.
Power of the Goo Goo Dolls,
Probably.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.